Hello, welcome back to my channel and to today's video where I'll be sharing how we recently prepared our garden to be ready for the summer months. So it's been roughly a year since I posted our garden renovation video, and if anyone missed that and perhaps you're just curious about the changes we made and the process, then I will link that video down below in the description box. Now, a year on, our new garden had seen all 4 British seasons, and as we went into spring, it was time to start doing all the little and the not so little jobs that we had on our to-do list in order to get ready for summer, when hopefully we'll be spending much more time outside in the garden. The first job was the first lawn mow of the season. Now, there are of course benefits to not cutting your grass, like increasing biodiversity, which is why No Mow May has become increasingly popular over the years. However, we have rather small dogs, and long grass, whilst incredibly fun to frolic and play in, just isn't the most practical. We also have the issue of Simon and his nose. Simon really suffers with hay fever, and it's recommended to keep grass short and trimmed regularly to prevent flowering and pollen release, which are the triggers for the common allergic reactions like itchy eyes and a runny nose. Now, despite being a hay fever sufferer, mowing the grass is one of Simon's jobs. Honestly, he is such a trooper. And before mowing, he uses a strimmer around the edges where the lawnmower can't quite get into all the little nooks and crannies. Once that's completed, the mowing can commence. So we have a little electric mower. I think we've had this for around about 4 years now, and it does the job. We don't have a vast amount of grass, so we don't need anything fancy or super high powered. The first mow of the season is a pretty big job because the grass is much longer than it would normally be, and it's quite thick, and there's probably a little bit of dampness right at the bottom because it's so long and thick. So it usually needs another mow a few days after the initial one, just after it's been able to dry a little bit more. The dogs have a very specific path that they like to run when they go into the garden, and the repeat wear and tear to these areas over the autumn-winter seasons meant that we had some bald spots that needed reseeding. So first off, Simon just aerated these bald spots using a gardening fork. It just loosens the compacted soil, and then he sprinkled some grass seed over the top, being as even as possible. We couldn't find our rake, so instead Simon just used our broom to spread the seed and then topped that with some topsoil to promote healthy growth. Having 4 dogs, reseeding is something that we've had to do quite a lot over the years, and this method has always worked well for us. Once the grass had time to dry out, the second mow could be done, and then he hand trimmed the edges where the lawn meets the patio. That's dedication, right? I know it seems a little bit of a tedious task, but it actually only takes about 5 minutes, if that, and it's worth it for that cleaner looking edge. After a sweep up of all the grass cuttings, Simon distributed some seed and feed across the entire lawn and then gave it a good water. Next up was a trim of some of our bushes and trees. These are usually trimmed earlier depending on the bush or tree, but sometimes we have a few stray branches which need to be neatened up or just trimmed if they're getting in the way of access to a certain area. Our apple tree in particular needs several cuts a year because it just grows so fast, very much has a mind of its own. But fret not, we get about 200 plus apples off this tree, so we can definitely spare a few branches here and there. Our spring has been incredibly dry this year and unseasonably warm. In fact, it's been the driest spring in over 100 years here in Kent. So the hosepipe has definitely been needed for watering our grass, plants and trees. And as a typical British person, this does leave me wondering what this means for the summer ahead. So at the start of the video, I mentioned various tasks that were on our to-do list, and one task that I've been putting off for the last couple of years is painting the UPVC windows on our pool house and gym building. Given that spring has been so dry, there was just no more escaping this task. Simon did the prep work for me, starting off by giving all the fascias and UPVC frames a good clean, just to loosen up and remove any dirt, spider webs, that kind of thing, and then I followed behind and rinsed them off using the hose. Painting UPVC windows is something I've done before, and the most important part is the prep. For them to come out looking good, you need to have sanded the surface and given them a really good clean to remove any debris and dust and grease. Otherwise, the paint will not stick properly and it will start peeling off. Now, because of the amount of UPVC to be painted, Simon used our Ryobi multi-tool with a small sanding attachment to go over all of the frames and fascias. He used 100 grade sandpaper, which is quite fine, and it just takes off the surface shine, leaving an ideal surface to be painted. Once everything was sanded and cleaned, I could then start taping the glass with frog tape. Now, I would highly recommend using frog tape if you're going to be painting your UPVC windows or doors or whatever it may be, because unlike masking tape, it has this thing called paint block technology. So it doesn't take the paint off the frames with it when you peel it off at the end. It is more expensive, but it's very much a worthwhile cost. I used Rust-Oleum's UPVC paint in the colour Natural Charcoal, which is just true black, and we opted for the matte finish so that these windows are more of a match to the matte black aluminium windows and bifolds that we have on the house. This UPVC paint is also available in satin and gloss finishes and comes in so many different colours. It's a really cost-effective way to update your windows and other UPVC surfaces like doors, guttering and drain pipes. So as I mentioned, this isn't my first rodeo. If we go back to the gym renovation video, which I will also share a link to down below in the description box, I painted the inside of those UPVC windows, but I used a sprayer. Now, this sprayer was also featured in my worst purchases of 2024 video that I posted at the start of this year because it broke after one use. So rather than waste more money on another sprayer, which granted is a much quicker application, I decided to go manual and just do this by hand with a good old-fashioned paintbrush and roller. I had a couple of brushes, one smaller for getting into all the tighter spaces and the corners, a slightly larger one for wider surface areas, and then a small 4-inch roller with a short pile sleeve for going over the wider flat areas to give them an even finish. On a warm day, this paint dries so quickly, as you'll probably see from some of the footage. It's touch dry after an hour, and then you can recoat after 4 hours. Now here I've gone from one extreme to another, from white to black, and I've only needed 2 coats for a completely opaque and even finish. So if you're thinking about undertaking this DIY task, I'd plan for 2 coats. You may remember that we had some wooden furniture which this year needed to be sanded down and retreated. Simon is the sanding king, so he did the prep for me again, using the same Ryobi multi-tool and sanding attachment. Wooden furniture looks great, but it does require maintenance, even if kept covered. Maybe not every year, but eventually it will require some sanding down and retreating at some point. So that's just something to bear in mind if perhaps you're in the market for some new garden furniture and you're being tempted by wood. While Simon finished off the chairs and table and then set them up ready for me to treat, I peeled off the frog tape from the windows that were now fully dry. And this is why you invest in frog tape. Such a satisfying peel with a clean edge. For the wooden table and chairs, which are made from acacia wood, I used a UV protection oil by Osmo in a clear satin finish. It's a 2-in-1 base and top coat with no biocides and protection against mould, algae and fungus, so it's perfect for outdoor furniture. It also doesn't peel, which is one very big advantage of using an oil like this versus a varnish. Now you do need a solid day of dry weather because it requires 12 hours to fully dry before you can recoat. Now this was a bit of an afterthought, but whilst painting the end of the pool house, I noticed the old light fixture that was up there, and I decided that I wanted to change that to a black glass lantern style light. Simon also installed a motion sensor to the light so that we have some light down in this area when it's dark and the dogs want to go outside. Because the new light fixture was a different shape, I needed to do some paint touch-ups to fix those little gaps where the white UPVC was still visible. This year we bought a leaf blower because we have a few established trees on our property and the need to sweep is constant regardless of the season. So we figured this would be a much more effective method of gathering up the leaves and debris. We opted for Ryobi because we already have a few of their other power tools, as you'll have seen in some of our videos, and they can all run off the same interchangeable batteries. So for us, it just made sense. Now, spoiler alert, but this will probably be one of our best purchases of 2025. We have decorative stones, or chippings as they're also known, around the edges of our patio, and this blower successfully blasted any leaves and debris off these areas without blowing all the stones out of place. Once swept into a pile, it was easy to fill up a bucket and then dump that in the garden waste bin. I think we both wish we'd invested in a leaf blower years ago because it makes this task so much easier and so much less of a chore. One small regret of ours looking back at when we had our garden done was that we didn't use some kind of stone bonding product to fix our decorative stones into place. At the time, we weren't quite sure if it would work on our size of stones, as these kind of products are usually advertised for use with gravel, which is much smaller than the chippings that we have. However, over the last few months, I've seen a few ads on Pinterest of people using these stone bonding products with larger stones. So we thought we'd give it a try on a small test area to see if it works for us before repeating the process for all of our stone edging. Simon removed the existing stones from this small section, blasted the area clear of debris using the leaf blower, and then I taped over the edge of our patio tiles just to protect them from any splashback of the bonding agent. With some fresh stones in a bucket, Simon added some Easy Hold Bonder, this is just the brand that we decided to try, and mixed it all together with a mixer drill attachment before pouring the stones back into our little test area. As per the instructions, he flattened the stones and compacted them using a trowel, making sure to fill all the gaps. The stones were left to dry for 12 hours before applying a secondary coat using a watering can. Once the second application was dry, I peeled off the tape and we gave them a test with a brush. First impressions are pretty good and they all seem to be stuck in place, but this is the only area in our garden where the stones will actually be walked on. So we've decided to just see how they fare as the season goes on. If they stay in place, we'll probably repeat this process for the rest of the stones around the garden, either later this season or next year. Another hefty task we had to undertake was the cleaning of the patio areas. This was the first time that we cleaned our patio after experiencing the autumn-winter seasons where there's a lot of fallen leaves and wet weather. We always knew that our choice of off-white porcelain patio tiles was not a practical one, but we were willing to accept the upkeep and maintenance in order to have that aesthetic. We borrowed a friend's jet washer with patio attachment last year to give the patio areas a clean after the garden had been finished. And we knew instantly that we'd need to invest in our own. So we waited for a good deal to come along and we ended up buying the exact same jet washer from Draper earlier on this year. In conjunction with the jet washer, we also used a porcelain patio cleaner from Projoint, which Simon poured into the little tank of the jet washer and I mixed some up manually in a bucket and applied that to the patio with a brush, just so the cleaner could get to work before Simon started working it with the patio attachment. This was a long and wet task, but it was also incredibly satisfying. It took about 4 hours to complete, but once it was done, the difference from before to after was crazy. I'd almost forgotten how light and bright our patio is, and it came up looking as good as new. Simon gave our outdoor sofa cover a quick blast with the jet washer as well, just to remove any dirt, leaves, spider webs, that kind of thing. And then we had a much needed break to allow the patio and cover to dry off in the sun. Before moving the sofa off the grass and back into position, I needed to give it a thorough clean. This sofa stays outside all year round, and it does have a very heavy duty winter cover, but that doesn't stop bugs from getting inside and bits of leaves and debris occasionally blowing up underneath the cover on a windy day. I use our Henry Hoover to clean each section of the sofa, removing the backrest cushions and the seat cushions, hoovering all the little nooks and crannies before flipping it over to see what's hiding on the bottom. I just use general purpose cleaner and a cloth on the aluminium frame to remove any dirt and spider webs, and I read somewhere that spiders and other little creepy crawlies can be deterred from settling in garden furniture by rubbing peppermint oil on those areas. So I put some on a cloth and I rubbed it over the frame and also over the undersection of the fabric. Now, I was quite liberal with it because I really don't like creepy crawlies, so hopefully that deters them for the next couple of months, and then they can move back in and have it for autumn winter. I had some solar spotlights from my Halloween display last year, so rather than them just sitting in a box gathering dust, I decided to use those to light up this area at night. Again, it's just useful for spotting the dogs when they go out in the dark and don't want to come back in when it's bedtime because they've more than likely found a little friend in the bushes. I bought some of these flat profile solar lights last year, and all but one, which I dropped, survived the winter. They light up every single night and provide a decent amount of light, so I just bought another set of 8 this year. I used one to replace the broken one in one of our large olive tree planters, and then I added a couple of extra ones. One to our lemon tree planter and another one in a smaller olive tree planter. And then I'll keep the others as spares in case of any more Emma damage. They look really lovely at night as they uplight the trees, and our garden is south facing, so they get a really good charge throughout the day and then last all night. Simon decided to drill some holes in the bird feeder that he made last year to encourage solitary bees to nest, because we have a bee hotel in another area of the garden and that's always full every year. But I really hope that birds don't see this as a quick snacking opportunity, because we all know how much precious Simon loves his bees, and he would be heartbroken if that happened. Now, we also took a trip to the garden centre, the first I'm sure of many this season, just to pick up some seasonal flowers and a few extra bits and bobs for the pots that we have at the front of our house. I like to stick to a colour theme, and our colour theme is white and lavender because we have really beautiful wisteria which adorns the front of our house, and I just think that white flowers look beautiful with that sort of subtle washed out purple colour when the wisteria is in bloom. And there we go, guys, our garden is ready for the summer season ahead. All we need now is the weather to cooperate for at least the next 3 to 4 months. If you've got any questions about anything that you've seen in today's video, then please write those in a comment and we'll get back to you ASAP. But just as a reminder, I have listed as much info as I could and added any links down in the description box below the video for your reference. If you needed some motivation to start your garden prep, I hope we've been able to provide that today. But for now, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.